Welcome back. Chapter 7. Max took the wagon. He didn't plan to buy supplies, but he needed the challenge of the hardwood. The buggy was faster, but it's what he drove when Alice was with him, so he tended to think of it as gentle. He had to drive past the big horse draw. What he seen there was burned into his mind. Knowing that the men did it in front of his sister on purpose sent waves of anger through him. That a stranger, the woman he'd married, had shown him what was going on under his nose further infuriated him. Hank, the major source of the problem, was saddling a horse. In the year he worked there, no woman who'd seen him held back from making a comment on his looks. He was a hard worker, but Max was tempted to get rid of him out of sheer annoyance. He was about to drive past when, damned if he didn't see her talking to him, his wife. She didn't see Max or pretended not to as she lifted her skirts up way too high and ran back to the house. With his teeth clamped together, he yelled, "Hank!" She better stop playing with Max. The man didn't have the courage to look Max in the eyes, but hid his face under his hat as he approached the wagon. It looked like he expected to be fired. "Get in," Max ordered. Hank looked up in surprise, like, "Yeah, who you talking to? I'm grown." "Unless you want to stop and drown your clothes first." Hank put his head back down. "No, sir," he managed to say, then climbed in the back. He didn't dare sit on the seat beside his boss. Max drove the wagon at a brisk pace, knowing he was tossing Hank around in the back. He already knew he made a mistake in all of this. Alice had pushed him to get married. At that time, his anger at John Kecklin was inflaming him so much that he couldn't think clearly. And Cornelia was always angry at him. She never came out and said it, but she expected Max to marry her. Then what? He'd have a lifetime of her temper? I know that's right. He said not. Of dealing with the greed of her father? Max got to the point where he'd do anything to make it all stop. Alice had agreed with her brother. "You cannot marry Carlina." I couldn't live with all the arguing. And Mr. Kecklin is a dreadful man. She came up with a solution. Max was to marry another woman. She'd be someone nice, competent, someone who could run the house in an orderly way and spread joy and cheer to them all. If he did this, it would solve all the problems. Cornelia wouldn't be shouting at Max, and her father would quit demanding that Max merge his acreage with Kecklin land. At the time, it had seemed like the perfect solution, and Max had imagined a life of peace. Kecklin would stop pressuring him, and even better, Max wouldn't be stuck with a woman who thought using a riding whip was the solution to every conversation she didn't like. Alice had done everything. She placed the advertisement in Kansas City Magazine, where it was one of hundreds. She read all the replies and compared them. At one of Esmeralda's bland meals, Alice said, "I like this one." She tapped one of the 9 photos spread across the table. Max liked the pretty girl on the end. Alice removed that picture from the lineup. "She's younger than I am. She doesn't know how to cook or run a house. We need someone with experience." Max looked at the picture of the woman Alice wanted. She looked too serious, well past her youth, and too weighed down by her long life. He certainly had no physical desire for her. Oh well, he thought, there are lots of women in town available for that. This woman's purpose was to put peace and quiet in his and Alice's life. Max was beginning to realize that his little sister was going to be with him forever, which was fine with him. All he needed in life was someone to look after the domestics, and he'd take care of everything else. It was a perfect plan. Until she showed up, that was. He expected her to be grateful. After all, he was her rescuer. He saved her from a life as an old spinster, 34 years old. She was way past her prime. Excuse me? that no other man wanted her as evident that something was wrong with her. He never told Alice, but before she was to arrive, he was quite nervous. He told his sister he had to see about business, then left. He went to the old homestead and stayed there for days. He lived on beans and peaches and spent hours by the river. He thought about his parents a lot. His father had a humorless man. His father had been a humorless man who denied his family any pleasures. He just wanted more land, more livestock, more money. Sometimes Max thought his mother died of neglect. Whatever the truth, Max knew he didn't want to be like his father. That's why he lavished his sister with everything he could. That she tended to hide away from the world because of her foot wasn't his fault. As Max sat by the water, he thought about his future. He'd be nice to the woman, kind, courteous at all times. At her age, she wouldn't expect the intimate parts of marriage. So he'd have no obligations in that respect. By the time she was to arrive, he felt he had it under control. He had his future planned out and he liked it. He'd have a peaceful household. He'd come home to good meals and a woman who was grateful to him. He'd smile at her gray hair and her stumbling giant gait. He would become fond of her. Yes, it was all going to be good. The problem started when he met her at the train. He had 3 men with him, not Hank, who'd been witness at the wedding. The pastor was waiting. Several women got off the train, most of them young, but one woman had gray hair piled into a whirly knot on top of her head. She had a waist as big as his horse's. Oh my goodness. She didn't look like her photo, but he wasn't surprised by that. She probably sent a picture of her younger self. He walked towards her, but then one of his men called out, "She's over here, boss." Turning, he saw a woman surrounded by his men and he froze in place. Oh, okay. She was pretty, and the shape of her was slim but curvy. She had a mass of dark hair that was messily piled up, not sticking back, and her big blue eyes, her mouth was exceptional. She smiled at him. He never seen such white and straight teeth or skin as soft looking as hers. His men seemed to understand what he was feeling as they started mocking him. They discarded the idea of Max being their boss and treated him like another cowboy. All the way to the church, the men had at him. 4 times tonight, they said. The girls of the Red Dog will be crying in loneliness. Tomorrow, I'm going to put in my order for a bride. Hey, boss, what happened to the old woman you told us to look for? Through all this, Max drove the wagon and said nothing. Nor did she. She just held on in a way that looked like she'd never been on a wagon before. But then, she was from a city, so maybe she's only ridden the fancy buggies on paved streets. It wasn't until the preacher asked her if she took Max for her husband that she seemed to come alive. And then she seemed bewildered by it all. Afterward, she didn't even seem to know how to walk in a skirt. So what did she usually wear? Men's trousers and boots? What a ridiculous thought. When they left the church, he saw that she didn't know how to get up into the wagon. He thought how useless she was, but he very much enjoyed putting his hands on, on her waist and lifting her up. From what he saw and felt, she seemed to have a good body under all those clothes. I bet. Max. The ride out of town had been an experience for him. He imagined a quiet, mousy little woman who would be full of gratitude. After all, he wasn't poor and he wasn't bad to look at. So she should have been shy and humble. I'm laughing because the mindset. But she was far from it. No matter what happened, she was brave and funny. Nothing had intimidated her. Not Martha nearly sending them crashing. Not the abundant saloons with the gaudy women outside. He thought that an educated Eastern lady would have been shocked. But no, his wife waved, and spoke to the women like they were her friends. When Cornelia showed up, he knew he should have driven on, but part of him wanted to gloat. At their split, she said some really nasty things about his masculinity. They shouldn't have, but her words hurt. When she struck at his new wife with her whip, he managed to save her. Afterward, he expected her to be frightened or angry maybe, but her only concern had been the damage done to the parasol Alice had made for her. To Max, anyone who appreciated his sister was his friend. On impulse, he took her to a homestead, his private place, where he didn't even take Alice. Max had surprised himself when he told her that he liked her. He never felt that way about a female before. To him, girls were either like Alice, delicate, fragile people who needed constant care and protection, or like Cornelia, who expected everything to be done for her. But this woman was different, and he told her so, or thought he did. He said he'd give her land, and if she stayed, he'd build her a house. That offer had been spur of the moment, unplanned. He thought that legally marrying her was enough, but after what he'd seen of her, he wanted to give more. He couldn't figure out how and why, but it had all gone wrong. She said she wanted to return home, that she wished she hadn't married him. She made it clear that she didn't want anything from him. He'd been hurt. Cornelia's temper and her whip had suddenly seemed more honest and certainly easier to deal with. Maybe it was wrong of him, but he made sure he gave her the roughest ride possible on the way to the house. When they got there, he pointed the way to Alice, then left her to fend for herself. Man. It was just minutes later that Alice was screaming that the woman had fainted. He carried her to the couch. She seemed to be all right, but she refused to even open her eyes while he was in the room. He left, but he didn't go far. Alice might need him. After that, he didn't want to think about all that had happened. He made up his mind that he was going to ignore her. He would never again allow her to get to him. And if she did, and if she said she wanted to go home, he'd put her on the first train out of town. But she'd come to his office, ordering him to go get some lawyer he didn't even know. When he told her no, he tried to make her understand that what she was saying had no logic. He was hoping to teach her something, but she wouldn't listen or learn. Instead, she talked utter nonsense about the preacher, a man she never even spoke to. What she said was so absurd, he quit listening. However, when she complained about his men, he did listen. That was his territory, not hers. So he went outside and looked. He showed her she was wrong. He didn't want to think about what he'd seen. His men were in front of Alice's window. They were wetting their shirts and showing off their peacock parade. His men. If he didn't need their work, he would have fired them on the spot. Instead, he was now sitting on a wagon heading into town to invite some man he didn't know to come to dinner to meet his innocent young sister. He stopped the buckboard in front of the law office. It was upstairs over his favorite saloon, the Red Dog. He didn't allow himself to look at the place, nor did he look at the man in the back of the wagon. He was afraid that if he did, he'd remember a vision of him in his wet, transparent shirt. Max thought he might rip it off and strangle him. Max dropped the reins, leaving them loose for Hank to take care of. Then he went up the tall outside staircase and opened the door. Bertram Lloyd was painted on the glass. Max removed his hat. A woman sat at the desk. He knew her. She was in her 40s and had buried 3 husbands. At the death of the last one, she said, "No more. I'm done." All the men in town had let out a sign of relief. Miss Ellis glanced up, then back down at the papers on her desk. "Thought you'd be busy today." He wasn't going to reply to that. "I need to see him." He nodded to the closed door behind her. "John Cleckland already been at him. He won't take you on. This has nothing to do with land." She looked up at him with interest. "What do you want with him on your wedding day?" Town says you got a mail order prize. Max clenched his fist at his side. The town can keep his mouth shut. He stepped past her and opened the door. The office was empty. He ain't here, she said. You could have told me that when when will he be back? About an hour. Old man Tucker died. He has to take care of it. You going to wait for him downstairs? Her smirking insinuation was clear. Was Max going to visit one of the girls in the saloon? He put his hat back on. I'll come back in an hour. See that he stays here. Max left and closed the door behind him. Her husband's probably ran away, he muttered as he went down the stairs. Out of habit, he headed toward the saloon. Might as well have a drink, he thought, but then he turned and went in the opposite direction. The Red Dog was his favorite, but it's where his wife's friends worked. It's where they knew him and would ask lots of questions. He walked down the street to the Blue Moon. It was a sleazy place with a filthy floor covered in straw cake with years of tobacco spit. Ooh. It stunk, but right now it suited his mood. He ordered a whiskey, then looked about the place. There were 3 tables with low-life cowboys playing cards. Max knew they'd be all fired from every job they'd had. Stealing, laziness, quick temper. They deserved what they got. There was a couple of girls, but there were a couple of girls, but they were leftovers, worn out from years at the higher end places. They looked at Max with hope. He gave a polite head shake, and they turned away. As his eyes adjusted to the dark, he saw a man in the far corner. It was the preacher. This morning he told Max to hurry up as he had a lot of things to do. Looked like getting drunk was at the head of the list. In spite of his better judgment, the woman's words rang in his head. She said this man could do accounts. For a moment, Max struggled between his pride and his absolute hatred of all forms of paperwork. The thought of getting rid of the numbers won. He downed a shot of the rot gut whiskey, then picked up a second one. I've got a problem, he said loud enough to be heard next door. When everyone in the place turned their attention to him, it felt good. After all, he was the second biggest landowner for miles around. Only old man Kecklin beat him. With the day Max was having, he liked being respected. I'm having trouble with my accounts. Half the men looked back at their cards. Accounts were of no interest to them. I can't figure them out, Max said. I got 12 pounds of peaches at 3 for a dime, 8 pounds of coffee at 12 cents a pound, 4 calves, 25, $2.50 each, and 6.5 yards of colic at 10 cents a yard. He looked at each person, but they turned away. Who can figure that out? Finally, he looked at the preacher, bent over a whiskey, being the gloomy man he always was. He said nothing. Max shot back the second whiskey, put on his hat, and started to leave. $12 and a penny. Everyone turned toward the dark corner. The preacher didn't look up. Is that right? The bartender asked Max. How the hell would I know? He snapped. Bottle. The bartender handed Max a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses that were relatively clean. He took them to the table in the back and sat down across from the preacher. How come my new wife knows you can add and subtract? The preacher poured himself a large whiskey from Max's bottle. Is this the woman I married you to this morning? Why are you here and not with her? None of your business. Why are you getting drunk and not taking care of that church we built for you? Nobody likes my sermons. That was so true that Max nodded. So how does she know about you? I have no idea. I never met her before today. Maybe somebody told her. Who knows to tell? The preacher poured himself more whiskey. How would I know that? This could go on all day, back and forth. Don't you want to get back to your bride? She likes me as much as the town likes your sermons. Ah, the man said, that's a problem. Good women want to like a man. You better stay with the girls at the Red Dog. I hear they like you a lot. Max closed his eyes for a moment. Does everyone in town know everything about me? Come work for me. Wrangling? He held up his hand. I'm old and soft. I can't. Accounting. Add up things. Put it all in books. I had a man for a while, but he ran off with Parmelia. I married them, remember? I'm surprised you do. You were drunk. The preacher grimaced. You say the same words 100 times and see if you don't need whiskey to fortify you. You can't drink at my house. All right, your precious little sister and the one nobody sees except the dressmaker. Who does she wear all that silk for? I heard your men. He cut off at the younger man's look. Max stood up. If you want the job, show up tomorrow morning at 8. Clean body and shaved and sober. If I even smell beer on you, you're out. That church has a hold over me, he signed. Takes my time. Stay out of the bars and you can do both of them. Max snorted. Or maybe my wife can fix it. She seems to have a plan for everybody. He put on his hat. Clean and sober, got it? The preacher pushed his full glass away, then gave a nod. He looked serious. I'll be there. Tell your wife that. He didn't seem to know how to finish. You tell her. She doesn't like talking to me. Max left the bar. Outside, he didn't have to pull out his pocket watch to know it hadn't been an hour yet. It was too early to go back to see the lawyer. The whiskey had elevated his mood a bit. Down the street was the Red Dog, and he knew that if he went there, he'd be welcome. There'd be laughter. He took 4 steps in that direction, then the sign for the dressmaker seemed to flash in his face. Hadn't Alice said something about her? He was lying to himself. He knew exactly what his sister had said. She told him he had to get a wife some new clothes. She dresses like a middle-aged school teacher, Alice said. She isn't a school teacher, Max shot back, and was given one of Alice's looks that made him shut up. Max went into the dressmaker shop. 30 minutes later, he walked out feeling like he wanted more whiskey. How does a man answer questions about fabric and lace and neckline and sizes? He kept telling her she had to go to his house, but she wouldn't stop asking questions. And then there was the tea and the little pink cakes. When Max began to think he was never going to escape, the woman shooed him out, saying she had to get to work. Relieved, he headed towards the lawyer's office. Max was only steps away from the stairs leading up to the lawyer's office and thinking hard. How did she know about the preacher and numbers? Did the man give some hint when he was marrying them? Maybe because he was preoccupied with his thoughts, he didn't see the danger lurking in the shadows of the alleyway. Before he could protect himself, he was ambushed. As he was pulled out of the light by 2 strong hands, he nearly fell. In the next second, he was pushed up against the wall, hands placed firmly on his chest, and he was being kissed. He pushed Cornelia away. You can't do that because you're married now. Her eyes filled with anger, something he was used to, but then they softened with tears. Cornelia was a woman so beautiful that she could silence a room full of people when she entered. Cornelia, with tears, could melt stone. When she saw that her tears changed his attitude, she put her hands back on his chest. I'm sorry, she whispered. I drove you to someone else, but I didn't mean to. You don't know how much I love you. It makes me do things I wouldn't normally do. He put his hands on her shoulders and moved her to arm's length. We can't do this. I have another life now. With her? The tears were gone. You already care for her that much? Alice said, leave her out of this. He took a breath to regain his composure. You know you and I could never be together. We fight all the time. I never got any work done. She gave him a look through her lashes. When you were with me, you didn't have time to work. I was well aware of that. He wasn't referring to the same thing she was. Remember the rainstorms? We were trapped in Papa's barn for hours. We took off our clothes and that's done. It's over, in the past. It doesn't have to be. This marriage of yours could be annulled. There are lots of grounds. She's too. Your father sent you to me, didn't he? He told you to say anything it takes to get me back. Yes. She looked at him without the tears, without the anger. You hurt me badly. I thought our lives would be spent together. You, me, and Alice. I've always loved your little sister. I know. Max could feel guilt seeping into him. But I couldn't think when you were around. Alex said I should. He couldn't reveal what was private. All he wanted was to get away from this. Alice was in on it? Cornelia sounded genuinely hurt. But she and I were friends. Has this woman won her over? Are you already in love with her? Alice likes her. I need to go. Where? To that new lawyer? I saw you go up there. Papa owns him. So it's no use trying to get him to help you. I'm not hiring him. He started to turn away. When she caught his arms, she had the look of her father. Max knew that under her feminine facade, she was as ruthless as that man was. Cornelia got whatever she wanted, most of the time anyway. If you're not hiring him, why are you going to see him? Her eyes widened. You want out of your revenge marriage, don't you? You want an annulment? Unless you're already been to bed with her, then it'll have to be a divorce. But that can be arranged. She drew in her breath. That's why you went to the preacher at the Blue Moon and brought him a bottle of whiskey. Stalker? Dang. What you do to her, Max? He can just tear up the papers. I bet that's already been done and you're free. The lawyer will do the paperwork, then you and I can. He stepped back from her. Stop it. There will be no annulment, no divorce. Quit spying on me. What I said to the preacher had nothing to do with the marriage, nor does seeing a lawyer. Then why? She yelled. You owe me that much. What is going on? He closed his eyes for a moment in surrender. I hired the preacher to do my accounts, and I'm inviting the lawyer to dinner. Etta wants him to meet Alice. Cornelia took a step back, her face showing her astonishment. Etta, she whispered, the wife? You are obeying her? She runs everything now? It's not like that. Cornelia glanced down at his crotch, then up again. She wore a sneer of contempt. She made a gelding of you. The sneer strengthened. Was she that good in bed? Did she do something I haven't done to you? Did she? Abruptly, Max left the alley. He took the stairs up to the lawyer's office, 2 at a time, then flung the door open and slammed it behind him. Miss Ellis didn't look up. You break that glass and you pay for it. He here? She shrugged in answer. Max thought that he had all he could take of women today, but wisely didn't say so. He strolled to the man's office, went inside, and shut the door. The lawyer looked up from his desk. If it isn't the kissing prince. I hear you tossed aside the ruling princess for a commoner. Max sat down so hard on the wooden chair he almost broke it. Don't give me crap or I'll hit you. I am warned. However, my free advice for you to not add Mrs. Ellis to your conquest. She devours husbands like candy. Max glared at him. Bert Lloyd leaned back in his chair. Gossip is that you got married this morning. But I just saw you kissing a stunning, beautiful young woman in the alley. I don't think she's your mail order bride. Kecklin's daughter is my guess. Cornelia came at me, not the other way around. Max waved his hand. Forget that. I'm here too. I know why you're here. You own a very large piece of land and you run a big herd. Yeah, Max said, and John Kecklin wants it all. Actually, he wants me to sue you to get it. Seems that you were supposed to marry his daughter, who I've been told is a real hellion. He nodded toward the door to indicate Mrs. Ellis as his source. Keklin wants you to give him everything you own as a dowry to receiving his daughter. I explained that dowries are usually the other way around. They're given to the groom. Keklin didn't shoot you for that. No, but he wanted to. I turned down his case, which is why I can tell you about it. So what can I do for you, Mr. Lawton? My wife wants you to come to dinner tonight. He looked shocked. This is the wife you married this morning? Don't you have other things to do tonight? Max gave him the look he used to get his men in line. My apologies. I would love to come to dinner. 7? Max stood up. Sure, whenever you get there. He left the office. When he got outside, he stopped on the landing. He's done all that he was supposed to do. He felt like he accomplished feats of strength, endurance, and sheer horror. He was almost smiling until he saw what was sitting on the back of his buckboard. He had no doubt in the world that the woman who had taken over his life had done it. He clumped down the stairs with a frown so deep his eyebrows met in the middle. Inside the office, Bert watched Max close the door so hard the glass rattled. Why did Max Lawton ask me to dinner on his wedding night? He asked Mrs. Ellis. He's got a little sister so hideous he hides her away. Looks like you've been chosen for her. If it gets me lost in business, I might do it. Then you'll make an enemy of John Keklin. I've already done that, Bert said. On second thought, maybe I'll move to Wichita tomorrow. Miss Ellis snorted. It'd be better if you chose one of the women sniffing around you instead of loving being the town catch. With a roll of his eyes, Bert went back into his office. He could never win against that woman. Sitting in the back of Max's wagon were 3 people. Hank, who he brought to get him away from Alice, who flanked by 2 women. One was Frida, who worked at the Red Dog. Max didn't want to think about his relationship with her. The other was Sally, who cleaned the saloons. Since they were the women his wife had called friends, Max knew she was behind this. He stood at the end of the wagon and said nothing, but his expressions told it all. Hank shook his head. It's not my fault. Your wife told me I was to find him and take him back to your place. To do what? Max's meaning was clear. They knew what Frida did for a living. I don't do that, Sally said rather haughty. I do, Frida said happily, making Hank laugh. Not at my house you don't. Max stepped back and made a sweep of his arms, meaning for them to get down. Hank and Sally started to comply, but Frida didn't move. Your wife, she emphasized the words, wants me to look after her garden. I don't have a garden. That's the point. Frida was glaring at him. If you go back on this job, I'll tell. She didn't have to explain who she would tell. Say it to one person, everyone would start saying Max Lawton wasn't to be trusted, that he went back on his word. Sally scooted back into the wagon. I guess your house needs cleaning. It did, but he wouldn't admit that. Every housekeeper he'd hired had run off with a man, so only Esmeralda was left. It took her 30 minutes to put her shoes on. Max looked at the 3 of them, all waiting for his decision. That was a joke. He hadn't made a decision since he got married. He didn't know how she'd done it, but within hours his new wife had taken control of his life, just as Cornelius said. Don't let her creep into your mind. I didn't know marriage was like this. He didn't realize he said it out loud until they started laughing. He climbed up the seat and headed home and frowned all the way there. When he got to his house, the 2 women wisely jumped out before he fully stopped. He tossed the reins to Hank, then turned to the women, but they had disappeared. Herding cats, he muttered. He caught sight of Frida, purple skirt, turning a corner and went after her. Where do you think you're going? She put her hands on her hips in defiance. I'm going to get some of the men I know. She wiggled her brows at him. To help me clear out the front. Since you're one of them, you want to join us? Max opened his mouth to speak, closed it, then said, only 3 of them, and not Hank. Deal, she said, then hurried to the barn. Inside the house, he was startled to see that it was already clean. It looked like the army had gone through it and straightened and washed everything. Isn't it lovely? Alice asked from behind him. How did this happen? Etta had the men do it. You should have seen her. A general leading an army can't command troops as well as she can. When he turned, he saw that Sally was beside her. In her hand was some sheet music. Your wife wants me to sing. Sally's eyes were wide in wonder. How did she know that I can sing? Only my family knows. Don't ask me anything about her, Max said, then looked at his sister. Where is she? Max, Alice said, if you start a fight with her and ruin tonight, I'll never forgive you. Is he coming? Yes, Max said. I got the lawyer, hired the preacher, fought off Cornelia, and made an enemy of John Kecklin. And now I'm here with a couple of saloon girls. I've done it all. Alice was unperturbed by her brother's outbursts. That's good. Etta is in the back. She's trying for a cooking prize. I don't know what she gets if she wins. Max had no reply to that. He stormed out of the house. She was easy to find, as all the men who were supposed to be working had abandoned their jobs and were crowded around the chuck wagon. It's what they used when they were away from the house and the men had to be fed. Why was it here now? Suddenly, a shout went out from all the men and they raised their arms in triumph. Some of the men saw Max, but they didn't scurry back to work as they should have. Rufus, a man who worked for him for years, was grinning. She won! He slapped his hat on his leg. By golly, she won! Max had an idea who she was, but he hoped it wasn't true. The men parted, and sure enough, Max's wife came through. In her hand was a fan of greenbacks. I beat him, she said to Max. She did, 3 men said in pride. The men were looking at him in anticipation, waiting for his response. You won what? Your cook smirked at me, Etta said. He told me that no lady could cook in a wagon. He said he had to do things really fast, and little old me couldn't possibly do that. I told him he hadn't met Lester. Then I challenged him. She held up the money. So you showed him? Max said. I did. She waved the money about. I'll spend this on a feast for all of you. One that I will cook. Again, the men cheered. I think you better go back to work now, she said to them. My husband needs you. The men gave a quick look at Max, then scattered. He was left alone with his wife. What are you doing? A lady doesn't. Give me a break. I'm not going to be treated like some fragile princess who doesn't know how to use an iron skillet. I can't bear being thought of as useless. You've been here less than a day. You don't have to do everything at once. Maybe not, but lockdown makes people crazy. Anyway, I need someone to take me to Esmeralda House to buy vegetables. I can drive 200 horses, but not just 2 of them. He was so puzzled by what she said that he hesitated. She lives in Mexican Village. Tell me what you want, and I'll send one of the men. She just looked at him. Max threw up his hand. I have a painted cat cutting weeds in the front, a little piddle singing in my parlor, and a wife gambling with my men. Why not go visit the Mexicans? Maybe I'll build a house there. After you eat one of their enchiladas, you might want to, Etta said, then walked away, her long skirt swishing. Unfortunately, a couple of men heard her and they laughed. For a moment, Max glared at them, but he couldn't sustain it. He laughed too. She made a good comeback. Smiling, he followed her into the house. For all that she infuriated him, he was intrigued by her, and more than that, he desired her. Just flat out wanted to take her to bed. But first, he wanted her to feel the same way about him. And that is the end of chapter 7. And that was a really cute chapter, although he was, his thought patterns about women and the descriptions that he had of women was like, huh? But that was back in the day. You know how women, well, it still go on today in 2025, how women is supposed to be beneath a man and they can't do this and can't do that. So I understand. But at first I thought the way he described her was that old woman and that he wasn't attracted to. But then he described the real one. So she is cute and strong and intelligent, and he is starting to like her and feel her, and now he want to with her. So we're gonna find out what's gonna happen in the next chapter. Bye for now.